emotional and physical abuse, extreme poverty, mental illness, homelessness, horrifically abusive foster care, bulimia, drug and alcohol addiction, pedophilia, death, suicide, and incest. So I can relate to almost everybody in one way or another. I have not been to war. I have never seen combat, but yeah.
So thank you, Adrian, for sharing that. So I guess my first question for you is when people hear the word trigger warnings, how should, what does that mean to you when you hear that word?
For me, that's a flag saying, hey, there's going to be some sensitive content and it may impact you emotionally. It may stir up some repressed, hidden, or below the surface emotions that you have that you may not even realize that you have. So I know personally I repressed and shoved down emotions. Basically, I was functioning numb for 2 decades.
What is it that you went through when you're functioning numb for those 2 decades?
Well, coming off of the childhood that I had, again, referred to the trigger warnings, all 11 items, I was not in a good place. I did go to college, I did graduate, but during that time, I got addicted to cocaine. And I didn't go to rehab, but I was able to break my addiction. However, I replaced it with alcohol and I became an alcoholic after that. So my life was awful. I ended up I was engaged to a man for a year, and 1 week before the wedding, he called it off. And I I made very, very poor decisions. I hurt and manipulated and used so many people. I say that I was not a good person for the first half of my life, and I am trying to make up for it in the second half of my life. I am trying to be good and do good and kind of make up for, if you will, the negative energy and the negative activities and thoughts and decisions and behaviors that I had during that time. So once my daughter was born, I was 25. Once she was born, she became the focus of my world, and that's when I got my shit together. And it wasn't an automatic thing. She was born August 7th, and because I've been repeatedly abandoned in my life, I didn't bond with her immediately. And part of the reason for that is I was terrified. In fact, there's a psychiatric evaluation and it's available on my website, unbrokencaldwell.com. I've posted my CPS case files, two psych evals, letters, various things. Um, it wasn't until November 8th I woke up hungover. I was on the bathroom floor mat, the mat that you put down in your bathroom. I woke up hungover, and November 8th, 2005 was the day that I decided I was going to raise her and that I was going to give her a childhood that was better than what I had, as good as possible. Now, and I put myself together. I had a college degree. That's when I started in personal banking. I ended up transitioning, becoming a financial planner a few years down the road. I became a person that she didn't have to be ashamed of or embarrassed by. But during that time, I wasn't processing and hadn't processed any of the traumas that had occurred through my childhood and adolescence. I just shoved all of it down focused on, what am I doing right now? I would work 12, 14, 15-hour days. I would drop her off at daycare at 7, 7:30 in the morning and pick her up at 7 at night and then, add on the commute. Her dad was we were married, but he was an over-the-road truck driver and eventually had a position where he was home on weekends. But I was effectively a married single mom. So I didn't have the room to be devastated or to address my trauma history or do any healing. I was busy trying to have a career and raise my daughter, alone effectively and just put one foot in front of the other. Now, unfortunately, she didn't have the childhood that I wanted for her, and I don't cover this in book one, but it'll be in book two. Her dad passed away when she was 10 years old. I was 35 years old. He was 38. And about 8 days after I had filed for disability with my rheumatoid arthritis, 8 days after I filed, he passed away suddenly in the night of a heart attack. Yeah,
When I
so
hear that, I was going to say, Adrian, when I hear that story, there's so many people that when they're looking back on their life, they realize the people that they hurt. And of course, they realize that they hurt themselves. And you came across as very apologetic to not only yourself, to not only those you have hurt, as well as you said that your daughter is not going to have the life that you had. When you share that, and maybe for those who are going through something similar, what do you think, maybe for you and maybe for others, are some of the obstacles that you would face in ensuring that you and your daughter and those close to you have a better life going forward?
what are some of my obstacles? Well, for me, a huge obstacle is the fact that I'm medically disabled. I have rheumatoid arthritis. I developed it when I was 33 years old. At 35 is when I was just no longer able to work. Um, so my medical disability is a huge obstacle. And, that along with being widowed, um, I I was just functioning. I was just trying to make it through the day. And after my husband passed, it took everything just for me to get to the grocery store. I stayed in bed for 4 months. I got my daughter ready for school, got her to school, and I stayed in bed. So my health is absolutely a challenge that I deal with to this day. Um, and challenges to healing, I repressed so much. And in my book, Unbroken, I I use the metaphor of a brick wall, that each trauma I endured is a brick and the mortar is made from my tears. And every trauma, I just laid a new brick and another and another. And finally, that wall got so high that not even I could see over it. And I was insulated, but it also meant that I was, as I mentioned earlier, numb. I wasn't feeling anything. And it really didn't occur to me. I didn't know I was numb until I started writing this book. And talking about triggers, each time that I went to write, I was severely triggered. It was I've read somewhere or heard that when the brain cannot differentiate between trauma that's 20 years old versus trauma that's happening now in real time. So, okay, awesome. So that is accurate. Terrain gave me the thumbs up. So, writing Unbroken Life Outside the Lines, it's taken me 5 years and it's been friggin' brutal, brutal because each trauma, in order to write about it, I've relived it and I've had that experience. And my husband I'm remarried, an incredible man. He is so ready for me to be done with the book because he just wants his happy wife back. You know, for the last 5 years, he's come home to, oh, I just wrote about drug and alcohol addiction, you know, for several hours. And one thing that I did, so I was a ward of the state of Texas until I was 18. My mother, my schizophrenic, physically abusive mother, she relinquished rights. And when I was 20 years old, I received a piece of paper from Children's Protective Services saying, hey, if you want your case file, you need to ask for it. Otherwise, we're going to dump it. And I actually asked for it. I wanted to see what was written down about me. So I have my CPS documents, and they sat either under a couch or in a closet for the last 2 decades. I would start to go through them, and I would get triggered and so overwhelmed that I just put the lid back on the box and shoved it back under the couch. In fact, they're still there. They're under the couch now. But I started going through that file, and that was one of the things. There are two reasons that I wrote Unbroken. And the foster mother that I lived with, she did more damage to me than my mother, and I was very angry about that. And there was no retribution available. There was no way to punish her. So, and I went to 13 schools by the time I graduated high school. So I got very good at meeting new people and the social engagement and keeping the conversation always about the other person, never about myself. But the few times that I did talk about myself, I would always hear, you should write a book. I've been told that since I was like 16 years old. And I've not been ready. I have just emotionally and I guess in life, I've not had the availability or the luxury, or I shouldn't use the word luxury. It's not a luxury to heal from your trauma. Um, but I was busy one foot in front of the other, and I didn't have room. Let's call it room. I didn't have room for my trauma. So writing Unbroken. And my daughter graduated high school, so she didn't need me. She doesn't need me as much. So it opened up availability. It gave me an opportunity to start writing, and those events that I mentioned, writing about them, it was hell. It was awful. And I'd love to say that, yes, I'd write it again in a minute, but the truth is, I have a hard time reading the manuscript. Like right now, it's in for editing, and they send it back to me and say, okay, read it, make sure. And I have a hard time. It just sitting down and doing it because I relive it. So I don't think I'm all the way healed, but I'm working on it. I am working on it.
Going from a difficult childhood with your mother and then going to a difficult experience with your foster parent, that could leave the average person thinking that, oh my goodness, all of this is happening to me. Why
Mm,
is this happening to me? And I know a few people that have gone from their birth parents to a foster parent, and some of the questions they ask themselves is, am I worthy of being loved in the way that I need to be loved? What were some of the questions, if not that one, were you asking yourself when you're going through these difficult period, person after person, and you're trying to evaluate your own value, your own love,
sure.
your own worthiness?
So, Train, I can tell you, after my mother would beat me, she would send me to the shower. And as early as fifth grade, I remember being in the shower, and that's where I could cry and I could scream and I could let out all of my emotions, things that I couldn't let out during the school day. That became my outlet, if you will. And I remember praying and asking God, why? Why do I have a crazy mother? Why am I the one that's going through all this? Why are you doing this to me? And I I felt very I, during one episode, I remember thinking, thank God, literally, that I only have one parent. How do these kids with two parents do it? I have no idea. In my mind, a father would have been another obstacle that I had to overcome or manipulate or maneuver around. So the am I worthy? I've been asking that and from such a young age. My mother had me when she was 19, and not many people know, but schizophrenia is different from other mental illnesses. It doesn't develop in mid-teens, it develops in late teens and early 20s. So my mother had me at 19, and her schizophrenia was developing as I was growing up. We effectively grew up together. So, um, me just the worthy, and I felt like I was selected for punishment, like I was chosen, and I did not understand it. And in my family, um my mother was one of four children. Her father was in the military, also schizophrenic. um we don't discuss how we feel. We don't discuss emotions. And I have an uncle who denies mental illness. He just says it doesn't exist. And that blows me away because his father was schizophrenic, his sister was schizophrenic. Um, so military family, you just, shut up. You've got the day in front of you. You've got stuff to do. You just deal with it and you push it down and move on. And that was the example that I learned from my aunts and uncles. You don't talk about it, you don't explore it. And my mother didn't have a vocation or a profession. She had me instead. And we bounced around with two sets of aunts and uncles. And as I mentioned, I went to 13 different schools. And I just living with them, I always felt like I was a burden, that I had to make up for the fact that I was even there in their homes. I would clean my aunt's house top to bottom. I would do dinner. I would do their laundry. I would do anything and everything to prove that I was worth having around. Like I felt like such a burden, and like I was just a weight. And in fact, living with my Aunt Rose and Uncle John in fourth grade, uh, I I always hated asking Aunt Rose for anything. And because I felt like a burden, I didn't feel, I knew I didn't belong there. My mother was supposed to raise me. We weren't supposed to be living with an aunt and uncle. So I was a burden in a way. There are other words I could use, but there was an imposition. I was there, and I tried to be valuable. I did everything I could to try to make up for it. So I hated asking her for things. So I would wait till the last minute. So my mom didn't have a car. So if I needed something, like a school supply or anything like that. I had to go to Aunt Rose. But I would always wait until the last minute. I would procrastinate asking her because I hated asking for anything more than the roof over my head and the food on my plate. That's at fourth grade. I was having such feelings of zero self-worth. And she would get so frustrated. She was like, why did you take it? Of course, the night before I needed it at like 6, 7, 8 p.m. Oh, by the way, Aunt Rose, I need, and we would schlep out to Walmart at, sometime in the evening the night before I needed something. And she was always, she never begrudged me anything, never. But she didn't understand why I would procrastinate. So self-worth is something that I haven't had or I didn't have until I was well in my 30s. Once I had a career, once I was raising a functioning, successful child, I built my identity and self-worth around those things.
Many times in trauma, we don't have something that creates value within ourselves. So many times you have to go outside to find value. So if we split it down, sometimes men will go out and they'll join gangs or they'll be around people that
Mhm.
aren't necessarily the healthiest, but they're giving them validation. They're giving them attention. You are
Mhm.
one of us. And then women on the other times where they'll go out and they maybe have multiple partners, multiple boyfriends, they're promiscuous. Two different groups of people experiencing trauma, but in two different ways and seeking validation
Mhm.
and attention in different ways. But this is how they find value because it wasn't created within inside of them. When you mention now that it took you a number of years to find it, what is something that you learned about yourself during that journey that maybe kind of surprised you, but you're appreciative that you did learn it about yourself?
Hmm. I would say that what is something that I learned? Help me understand the question better, Train.
Absolutely. So I'll use myself an example. So I grew up without my mother and my father. So that was a traumatic experience because I was raised by my grandmother who passed away last year.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you for that. So, what I learned about myself during that time was I didn't develop trust of people because my primary caregivers at that time weren't there to support me for whatever their reasons are.
Right,
So, I went around hoping to get trust from people, so I was people pleasing.
right.
Right. So one thing that I learned about myself was not only how people pleasing affected me up until my 20s, but that I had to learn to be okay with putting myself first.
Mm,
And what I learned was that when I started doing that, it wasn't the end of the world. But before I learned that, Adrian,
mm,
I thought it would be the end of the world. Oh my God, they're going to be disappointed in me.
right.
There's a little bit of guilt there. I've let other people down, but more importantly, I was letting myself down to please others. So that's an example of something that I learned about myself during that journey.
It's interesting. You absolutely nailed it on the validation, seeking validation from external sources. I was promiscuous. I did seek attention from men, and it was because I had no self-worth. And developing a self-esteem I that was centered around external factors, when I lost those factors, for example, when my husband died and when I became medically disabled and I lost my career, I I had to find self-esteem within myself, whereas before that it was through those external factors, my spouse, my career, my validation and my self-worth had come from external sources. So at 35, when I lost both of those things, I I had to come up with something new. And I would say what I learned, uh, it's so cliche and trite, but put your own air mask on first. I have to take care of myself. If I don't, nobody else is going to do it. And if I don't, I am not in a position to take care of my daughter and the people that I love if I don't take care of myself first. And that is something that as you mentioned, how you felt that you thought it would be the end of the world, I thought it would be the end of the world. So,
You mentioned your daughter. Many parents, their children are a source of inspiration they didn't know that they needed, but it's so welcomed. How much of a positive role does your daughter play in your life these days?
okay. She's a total pain in the ass. And she knows it. She and I are very similar. She has been her own person from the time she was in the womb. I know a lot of parents, a lot of people consider their children as an extension of themselves. It has never been that way with my daughter. So I was pregnant with her and I was in a kitchen. I wanted a glass of water, so I was reaching up in a cabinet to get a glass, and the countertop pushed against my belly and she pushed back. She made me take a step back. And that's her from before she was born. She's always been independent. She's an only child, and several times she was asked if she wanted a sibling, and her answer was no. She didn't want to share her stuff. I was like, fair enough. That's a fair answer. It's good. But she has something that I actually kind of envy. She doesn't need companionship the way I do or that I expect many people do. She is totally fine being on her own, being alone. She's good. She's already told me she doesn't plan on having children. She said that she's in college right now to become a school teacher. She told me that her students are going to be her children, and I'm good with that. So she's I call her my angel. I feel like God gave her to me so I would get my shit together. So I would put together a life. Having her forced me to do that. And I consider her a blessing. But and I think I would have gotten my life together had I not had her, but I'm not sure. I know she's the reason that I got serious. So I married her father for a green card for him, not for me. So she was a wedding present. We got married for a green card. He was from England, and we had been dating a few months. He was in the U.S. on vacation when we met, and he had just graduated from uni and had sold his house, and he was just touring the U.S. and we met. And I said, hey, you should find, a cute American girl, get married. That way you can stay in the US. And he was like, his response was, so do you wanna? That was the marriage proposal. So do you wanna? But his pickup line was the best. We were in a nightclub. He was wearing flip-flops and cargo shorts. Very bizarre. And he said, he walked up to me, he said, "You're beautiful. Can I buy you dinner?" And that got my attention. I was like, that wasn't a drink, that wasn't a dance, that wasn't, I was like, okay, all right, not bad. So, yeah. I think I kind of rambled on a little bit there, but inspiration, she's the foundation. And I have tried to kill myself more times than I know. I have a suicide attempt from when I was in a blackout. I was in a functioning blackout, and I woke up in the hospital the next morning. And yeah, not sure where I was going with that, but she she caused me. And as I said, it wasn't immediate. When she was born, it took me from August 7th until November 8th for me to make the decision that I was capable of being her parent, that I was capable of raising her, and making the decision that I was going to give her the childhood that I didn't get. My grandmother took care of me as well. My grandfather moved the family down to Houston from Fayetteville, North Carolina. So he moved them and then immediately abandoned them. He had had a mistress on the side for the past 30 years, and she was waiting for him. He had told her that as soon as his kids were out of school, he would leave his wife and go be with her. And he did exactly that. So, losing a breadwinner, the four children, my grandparents' four children, including my mother, had to go to work, and my grandmother watched me as well. And she was raising me, and she was also my shield between my schizophrenic, crazy, physically abusive mother. She guarded me, she was my protector, and she died when I was 7 years old. So, abandonment issues are absolutely on the table. It was the first of many abandonments. So, hmm, yeah.
You mentioned abandonment, and I know that that's something that I felt. And it was something that I had to overcome because let's be honest, you're looking around and you're like, oh my God, there's 8 billion people. Someone is going to leave me and remind me of what I went through. It could be a friend, it could be a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife. It could even be your child that puts
Mhm.
you in a situation that brings back those memories, those thoughts, those emotions of don't leave me because I just can't handle one more person leaving me because you begin to doubt yourself. Is it me?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Are these some of the
Absolutely, you
thoughts
have
that you
those
had?
thoughts. Absolutely. So, my grandmother passed, and that was an abandonment. My mother, when she relinquished her parental rights, that was an abandonment. And then the family that we were supposed to go live with, they kept my brother, but they kicked me out 9 months later. So I have a psychiatric evaluation from when I was 12 years old, when I was living with that family. And one of my diagnoses is early onset reactive attachment disorder. I have an actual attachment disorder. I don't bond to people the way that other people do. And I think that probably explains why it took time with my daughter, but before I felt that connection now, that connection to her. So the abandonment was a huge factor in my life. So between being a burden and being abandoned, I I was just so not in a good place. I wasn't when I was in college drinking and doing drugs, it was absolutely me self-medicating, just trying to forget, to numb the pain, to forget the past. And it it jeopardized a lot. I knew with the drugs that if I didn't stop, I was going to ruin my life. And the drinking, it took me longer to stop that. But I had to hit rock bottom. So abandonment is a huge issue. And going back to what you mentioned about pleasing others, you know, I have historically done anything you know, beginning with manipulation, coercion to ensure that somebody doesn't leave me. And one thing that I've done is, in fact, with my daughter's father, um, I pushed against him, against the relationship, against the marriage. I tried getting him to leave. Like I was pushing against what I thought was the inevitable end of our marriage, the inevitable he's going to leave me. And amazingly, he didn't. He he stuck around and there was an incident and we got divorced and it was the best thing possible for our marriage. But it was another situation where, okay, this person's gone. This isn't going to work. We were fully divorced, separate lives. He was dating someone, I was engaged to someone. And we actually ended up getting remarried. Oh, I was going to say, our daughter was a wedding present. She was conceived the weekend we got married. We did not get married because I was knocked up. We got married for a green card. I always like to clarify that point. So that's not
So,
in this book. That'll be in book two.
so let me ask you, you mentioned the book and you mentioned how important it was for you to write it. When you look at that book and that journey for you to put your story in there, how, what emotions did you feel when you're writing it and when you finished it?
Well, I thought I finished it multiple times. I would stop writing and I would say to myself and to my husband, okay, I'm done. And then a day or a week goes by and I went back to it and I added more and I added stories and I changed things. So there were multiple I'm finished. In fact, I turned it into my publisher and they started formatting it and I went and made changes to the manuscript, 10,000 word change, which meant it needed to be re-edited. So finishing it, oh, I can't imagine what it's going to feel like to have the final book in my hands. I'm not there yet. The book won't be out until, well, actually, I was just told today that February 17th is probably too optimistic. It's probably going to come out in March of 2026. And the journey of writing Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, it was brutal terrain. It was so brutal because, as I mentioned, the brain doesn't differentiate between 20 years ago and present day and reliving everything. It's been so cathartic. I've addressed issues that I didn't even know were issues. My self-esteem, my self-worth, that validation, my abandonment issues, my attachment disorder. Um, and I have an incredible life now. Even though I'm medically disabled, the life that I have, if you had shown the 15-year-old Adrienne the life that I have now, the 15-year-old Adrienne would have called you a liar. Like that's how good and how blessed I am. And I'm so incredibly grateful because I know how bad it can get. I know I've been there, I've lived it. So, the journey of Unbroken, oh God, so many tears, so much, going through. One side note, I made that CPS case file, the documents that I received from Children's Protective Services. I've made pretty much all of them, all the important ones. They're available online at my website at Unbroken Caldwell. And I didn't shy away from the bad things as well. The two psychiatric evaluations, they're on there. The therapist notes saying, you know, she has an attachment disorder, she's manipulative, she's um, yeah, I have put everything out there with my book and with my website. And what I would love, and I don't know if this will happen or not, but I would love for my firsthand account of the trauma and abuses, so Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, I would love for that book plus Unbroken, the case file, where all those documents, if I put them in a companion text using both books, and giving it to psychology and counseling and therapy students who are focused on early childhood trauma. I would love to have my book in those students' hands because I have both things. I've got the clinical perspective. I have the doctor's notes. I have that information. And then I have that firsthand experience of all of those traumas. So I think well, actually, I know it was helpful to at least one person. My psychiatrist had an intern, and I had sent my manuscript to my psychiatrist, and she asked if her intern could read it. And I had feedback from the intern saying that my book actually helped her choose her career field, like which path she was going to go down. So I I think I have a unique perspective that hasn't really existed before, the clinical and the firsthand. But we'll see. I've got it out to professors and experts, and I'm trying to solicit opinions. Would this be helpful in a classroom? But first, I have to publish the damn thing. So I'm getting there.
Let me ask you one final question, Adrian, before we close today. I want to give you three wishes. Okay?
Three wishes. Okay.
Yes. So you can wish for everything but more money and, of course, more wishes. So, what are three things you wish about a person remaining unbroken and why?
Three things I wish for a person to remain unbroken. Hmm. I would wish that those people, if I could magically make them know how loved they are. Somewhere most people are loved, whether they feel it or acknowledge it or realize it. They have parents or relatives or somebody who's in their corner, and I would wish that nobody ever felt unworthy or needed that validation or had that feeling of being a burden. I would give them that love, the security of being loved. That's my wish number one. So, I get two more wishes. Okay. Being unbroken. I would wish for people to know that being damaged does not mean you're broken. You are whole. Damage does not equal defective. And to give everyone that security, that acknowledgement that, hey, it's okay to have gone through some shit, lived through it, and know that you've still got some work to do. You're not fully healed. I don't know that a person ever becomes fully healed. Maybe that's wish number three. I got that. Wish number three, fully healed. But I would want them to understand and to know that it's okay to be messed up. That doesn't make you defective or unworthy or undeserving. So